Welcome to Breaking Woke, where I show you how to identify, debunk, and dismantle politically correct ideas. Hi, I'm Douglas Kruger, author of the global new book, Political Correctness Does More Harm Than Good. Two things under the hatchet today. These are almost unbelievable. A couple of days ago, a liberal Democrat in the United States opened the meeting of Congress with a prayer, and he ended the prayer, I kid you not, with the words, "Amen" and "Awomen." Now, one of two things must have happened here. Either this was done spontaneously, in which case our response is perhaps you want to practice a little more mental discipline and clarity of thinking when you are speaking at such an august occasion. The second thing is perhaps it was planned, in which case did he not perhaps bother to check what the word amen actually means? It has nothing whatsoever to do with men. It is in fact a Hebrew word, derived from the Hebrew and later translated into Latin. It means so be it, as in, our Father, protect us, keep our family safe, guide us, thank you for this, so be it. It's roughly, it's a Hebrew equivalent to Captain Picard saying, make it so. So, no jokes, he ends this meeting by saying, Amen and Awomen. Now gather round, kids, we're going to have ice cream, no pushing. And at the same time as this, the Democrat Party is quite seriously proposing banning gendered language in the US Congress. Now, for those of us who do not live in the United States of America, why does that matter? Well, because the US sets the tone for everyone. When it happens in a US government and becomes seen by the world, and certainly this was, it tends to spread outward. It is culturally trend-setting. So, here is how you debunk and oppose this idea. Many times when it comes to politically correct ideas, we can sense that something is wrong, that it poses as kindness, but we struggle to articulate precisely what is wrong. Let me help you. Here are 10 things wrong with this one. Number 1. The impulse to tell grown-ups what they may and may not do is childish. I can remember being about 4 years old, and the game which was foisted upon us by our fellow 4-year-olds was, you're not allowed to step on the crack. And I can remember the glee with which the rules were enforced. You're not allowed to do this or you're out. This one is something similar, making up a rule and telling people who are intelligent enough, mature enough, and strategic enough to have made it to the US Congress that they are not allowed to use certain words. The impulse to tell others what they may and may not do is childish. It is hidden in the guise of trying not to offend people. I like to believe that if you have made it to the halls of power in the United States of America, which remains the most powerful nation in the world, that you have some understanding of how to speak like a civilized human being without offending others. And if you do offend others, that's called free speech. And if it is not permitted, if you are not allowed to offend others, attendant with the consequences and the feedback you will necessarily receive, then you are not free, and freedom of speech, which is one of their tenets, has been transgressed. Number 2, the principle is arbitrary and capricious. This is an example of something that liberals didn't believe in 10 years ago, or shall we say it, 5 minutes ago, but they now do passionately. I often argue that if you want to know what a liberal will believe passionately and to the core of his being next week, you must read this week's liberal op-eds, because you'll find out what he believes at the same time that he does. CNN will tell him day by day. Now, does it not strain credulity that this supposedly important universal truth was discovered 5 minutes ago? And it begs the question, what other grand universal truths about human nature will they discover next week? Does that not seem more like a fad, a trend, or a fashion than a universal principle to you? Number 3, gender is the fact at the center of human life. It is the formula for life. So logically, well, let's pretend that the very existence of our life-giving formula is not only embarrassing, but shameful and oppressive, and we must get rid of it. We must never speak of it. Good is bad, up is down, and life itself is a problem to be solved by liberals using wordplay. Gender, male and female, is the fact at the basis of all life. Take it away, there is nothing but a deathscape. Maybe it's important, and maybe it's not embarrassing. Number 4. The point of language is communication. It is specificity. We can understand each other, and we can only understand each other because of the signifying effect of semantic communication, of labels. Along come liberals and tell us that we may no longer use a category of nouns. It is so 1984 that it would be funny if it were not terrifying. If you haven't read 1984 by Orwell, please do. Look at the government department whose job it is to destroy words and to ban the saying of certain things. I mean, it is Orwellian in the most literal sense. They are trying to take words out of the vocabulary. In that book, which was written so many decades ago, it was part of the definition and the mechanics of tyranny. Number 5. This is radical. With the exception of the Soviet Union, and we'll get to that, it has never been done before. So, what are the costs of this radical imposition of a strange new idea, banning words like mother, father, male, female, boy? Do we know? Or will we simply forge ahead and find out what the consequences will be later on down the line? I'm reminded of the case, several cases in fact. There was one in February of 2020 in the US, of violent men in prison deciding that they were transgender, and liberals saying that if this person is transgender and a man is a woman if he says so and if he says so emotionally, transferring this man to a woman's prison where he sexually molested a woman. Go look it up. In fact, there are several such cases. This is an example of these ideas that liberals come up with and they go, so beautiful, so wonderful, so enlightened. And we ask, at what cost? What happens if we follow this project? And they will not entertain it because they are so enamored of the feelings of self-righteous enlightenment. Look what we're doing. At what cost? We don't know what the results are of banning language, and to do so in one of the most powerful councils of humanity in the world, to say, we're going to take the fact of life, the formula for human existence, out of it, we're going to ban it. What are the consequences? We have no idea at this point in time, but let's forge ahead with it because it makes us feel good and it's revolutionary. Just the most incredible thing. Number 6, the specific words that they want to ban. Ban, mind you, are words like mother. Do you think of the word mother as a shameful label? I think it's one of the very best things that humanity does. Words like mother, father, son, daughter, banning them as though these words are bad, as though they oppress people. Their argument, of course, is that there is no difference between biological genders, that a mother is a father, is a rat, is a pig, is a boy, all is blob, we are the Borg, and you will be assimilated. There are many responses to that particular argument. Here are just 2. I think a mother giving birth is a miracle, and that is to the credit and to the glory of women. It's not something for men, we can't do it. Here's another interesting fact. A young child, especially a young man, raised without a father in the household is 7 times more likely to be arrested for violent crime. And that is not affected by the mother, it is affected by the father. There are biological differences and they matter. Not only that, they're beautiful and to be celebrated. Weren't we all about celebrating diversity 5 seconds ago? Here we are banning difference. Imagine that. Number 7, and this sounds like a philosophical one, but it has practical implications. If word and reality may be freely detached so as to have no relationship, what is the limiting principle? If belief is sufficient to inform statement of fact, then anyone can say anything and it will have to be taken as true because they believe it to be true. So, if we are saying that words like male and female, mother and father do not matter, that there is no relationship between word and subject, word and object, then what we are doing is we are subtly parting the relationship, the semantic relationship between the signifier and the signified. Now, let me ask you a question here. How far can that go? If we are not permitted to speak the truth, or if the garbling of semantic content becomes permissible, how far does that particular slippery slope go? Can anything be deemed to be truth if the speaker believes it? A man is a chipmunk, a man is whatever he believes he is. Then how far does language go wrong? When someone promises to speak the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, will there be any semantic relationship between the content of their words and reality, or will that no longer matter, because there has been a parting of ways between the two? Now, It's very interesting to note that when we talk about slippery slopes like this, the left is very quick to jump on that and say there's no such thing, it never happens, it will never go that far. Here, however, is an example of how they like to use the slippery slope argument. Even the permitting of off-color humor will lead to genocide, and so it must be banned. Now that is a remarkable slippery slope. They're saying if you're allowed to tell an off-color joke about an Irishman walks into a bar, something that has an ethnic basis or something that in some way focuses on a demography, that must be banned because the end results of that can be genocide, which of course is complete nonsense. But it does show in principle that they believe in the slippery slope effect. Now let me ask you, if you are allowed to take words and objects and part ways, if there is no truth relationship between them, how far can that go and what is the limiting principle? We might look at that and say, well, that's just bizarre, that's just nuts. But 5 seconds ago, this was nuts. The idea of banning the use of the word mother as somehow oppressive. Number 8, this is ideological. But it is their ideology and not everyone else's, and therefore this is undemocratic and infringes on other people's rights. What if we simply say no? Is that an option? If I were, hypothetically, a part of that Congress and I wanted to say mother or father or daughter or son, would they forbid me from saying so? The largest faith grouping in the United States of America remains Christians, and their Bible says, in the beginning, God made them male and female he made them. If you instruct this group, which comprises the largest faith demographic in the United States, that they are not allowed to say that, you are impeding on their religious freedom. That's a very interesting thought. This decree of theirs, this proposal that they would like to enforce on others is ideological, but it is their ideology. It is not everyone else's. How does that work? Number 9, if you want to lose elections, certainly this is how you do it. I can remember 2015-2016 when Donald Trump announced that he was going to run for president. And I turned to my wife and I said, if he runs, he's going to win. And she said, why do you think that? And I said, well, it's not so much to do with any merits on his part. It's to do with political correctness and how people are sick of it. You'll recall at the time, under the Obama administration, the great social fight was to put men in women's bathrooms, and people were sick of it. Much of Donald Trump's victory in 2016 was a backlash against political correctness. And here we are, right on cue, doing it all over again. In Congress, in one of their most powerful forums, and one of the most powerful forums in the world, they're saying you're not allowed to refer to a mother or a father, a daughter or a son. The sense of priorities here also somewhat beggars belief. Americans have gone through a year of disruption and lockdowns and the loss of their businesses and livelihoods, and there's Congress going, we'll spring into action and ban gendered language. It's so out of touch as to be, I don't think the word insulting quite captures it. Political correctness, it's the most incredible thing. Number 10, we have seen this move before, only once, in the bowels of an evil empire. So let's get practical. If gender is such an evil and oppressive problem, we're going to need a new word by which government ministers, government workers, members of parliament can refer to one another. How do you solve that problem? Well, fortunately, this exact problem was raised and solved once before in the Soviet Union. Your new word is comrade. That will allow you to avoid male, female, Mr., Mrs., and so forth. You just call everyone comrade. What could possibly go wrong with that? Now finally, I don't think this one is going to pass. It has been proposed, I think it's going to be shut down, and I think there's going to be something interesting that happens at the end of this. I will call it out, I'd like you to call it out as well. People are going to say, they're just not ready for it yet. Now built into that sentence is the implication that this is obviously the right thing to do, that it is obviously correct. We're just a little slow. We're just lagging behind. We're a little slow to get there, but we will eventually see the light. If and when you hear that phrase, we're not ready for it yet, use these points, use this video if you wish to do so, and oppose this idea. It is a dreadful idea. I think it is morally wrong. I think that gender is the fact at the center of life, and attempts to ban it, to ban references to it, strike me as sinister. And the thing about politically correct ideas is that they rely on majority stupidity. If everyone agrees that the emperor is wearing wonderful new clothes, then it goes ahead. If enough people attack it, point out the flaws and the fallacies, and embarrass it as a stupid idea, it gets shut down. It is a social construct. It can be socially deconstructed. If you enjoy this sort of content, please do subscribe to the channel and hit the notifications bell so that you get the updates as they go live on YouTube. I aggregate all of this content on a site called breakingwoke.com. And folks, some good news. My global new book, Political Correctness Does More Harm Than Good, has just gone live on Audible. If you are a fan of audiobooks the same way that I am, please do consider downloading it. I absolutely love audiobooks. I listen to them when I'm driving, when I'm in the bath, exercising, particularly uninteresting love-making sessions, whatever the case might be, and I would really be honored if you would consider downloading it and learning the arguments by which we oppose political correctness.